Hi, and welcome to the Purpose Pursuit podcast with me, Hannah Miller. And in today's episode, I am joined by a fantastic guest, and you are in for a real treat. Her name is Kate Moryoussef, and she's the author of the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Toolkit, and she hosts the really popular ADHD Women's Wellbeing podcast. She's someone who was late diagnosed with ADHD herself, and she spends her life and work supporting people in the same boat. Now, our conversation goes much wider than her ADHD story and looks at some of the core themes of her book around rejection sensitivity, looking after our nervous system, and awakening who we really are. And I think there's something in this for everybody. So whether you are neurodiverse yourself, curious about the topic, or just interested to hear a life story and how that's rooted in a sense of purpose through difficult seasons of life, then listen to what's coming up. Hello, Kate. How are you today?
Hi, Hannah. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I am okay. We are recording coming into the end of the year. So how are you feeling around the whole Christmas vibe? Are you ready?
Oh, I am, I have to say, ready for a rest, for sure. It's been a busy year, and the more I think about it, the more it is like, I hope that 2026, I'm going to lean more into resting, slowing down, trying to be a bit more present. That's what I'm feeling. I feel like 2025 has been unbelievable. Got a book out and all of that, but my nervous system needs definitely needs a rest.
It's funny because we've both just recorded with each other, haven't we? And when I was on your pod, you had been rushing from one thing to the other, and you were probably thinking as you sat down, I don't know, I'm imagining I'm spending too much of my life rushing. And I have just literally done the same to you, haven't I? And said, give me 10 minutes. Yeah. And I sat on the toilet and thought, I am spending too much of my life feeling like I'm doing everything at 100 miles an hour. Why do you think we get to this place?
Because we want to do a lot. We've got, a lot of purpose. We've got a lot of kind of ideas and ambition, and we want to make a change. I talk about this a lot, in my community, that there's women who are driven by, this sort of internal motor, this restless motor, which can contribute to doing a lot, achieving a lot, being very productive. Yeah. But it's another reason why so many of us with ADHD are burnt out, and we suffer with sort of like different physical health kind of conditions and issues that sort of seem to be quite cyclical. And I think it's trying to find that balance, that elusive balance that we all try and struggle with, but trying to be a bit more kind of intentional about it for us and our nervous systems, because we are more sensitive.
And I think that term, restless motor, is a really good way of putting it. Just that idea of there is this sort of sometimes self-inflicted, and again, some of the things I talk about with people is we have to understand that sometimes some of this is on us. It's not just situational. It's not just the system we're in. There is some of it that's on us to recognise. We don't always make the right choices. Yeah. I mean, I want to go back in a minute to talk a little bit about your own sort of journey to diagnosis. But before we do, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here. But when you think about next year, what is one thing that you think you might try and do a bit differently so that the year looks a little bit different? I mean, you won't be launching a book, so that's one thing that will look different. But is there anything that you think that's one measure I need to take?
Oh, gosh. So, no, I have actually been really reflective over the past couple of weeks. I felt a little bit kind of disorientated, I would say, energetically. Just, I don't doubt that I love working in this space. I just have had a few sort of perspective shifts and mindset shifts, and I think it is down to the fact that everything has been quite rushed, like one thing to the other, and not being able to breathe, and potentially writing a book, launching a book, or it all being quite quick, within about 18 months. I've not actually even acknowledged that, even though I've seen the messages and it's so lovely to read people's reviews, I actually just need to take stock a little bit, and that's not something I'm very good at. I'm not very good at taking stock or anything like that. So I think for next year, I just want to kind of almost look back and go, over the past 4 years since the podcast launched, I've not taken my foot off the pedal, and I think I'm ready to just kind of slow down a little bit, because I do feel there's an evolution coming. I still have a lot more to give. I know that I'm probably only just stepping into that purpose. I feel I'm sort of on the precipice of, but I don't want to rush it this time. I want to be able to kind of be like, oh, where's it taking me? And almost enjoy the journey, enjoy the curiosity behind it, because I have a feeling and an inkling of where it's going, and there probably will be another book, hopefully. But I just want to be able to write the book without it being kind of so rushed, because as you probably know, with writing a book, it's, you know, it's full steam ahead. Once you've written the book proposal, then you go through with all the sort of, speaking to the different publishers, and then they kind of go, right, can you deliver 3 chapters in 12 weeks or whatever it was, or 10 weeks? And that's it. And then with my ADHD brain, once someone's given me that deadline, that's all I can think about. And it was just all consuming. And so I wasn't present in any other way. I was just, I need to write the book. Oh my God, I'm going to procrastinate. I've got so much to do. I've still got client work to do and all of that. So yeah, I'm trying really, really hard to step into a more intentional practice for next year. Yeah, you can hold me accountable on this conversation.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that, because I mean, I'm about 8 months behind you, I think, in this process. So for the listeners, by coincidence, Kate and I published in the same imprint. We had the same original editorial team. That's all coincidence. That's not how we met. But I had a bit of a little mini party on Monday night. And I one of my biggest reflections are people forced me to do that, because I found the whole thing quite abstract, which sounds like it's what you're saying. Yeah. It's this really bizarre thing that, I mean, I've got your book here in front of me. I've also got my book here in my hand. And yet the whole concept of this being an actual thing feels so abstract to me. Like you've just said, people might be sending in reviews, early comments, readers, etc. But the fact that we've both done that thing this year and yet can find it quite difficult to feel a tangible sense of connection to, maybe that's helpful for people to listen to, that anyone else, that you don't have to have written a book, but if this year's had something quite seismic in it, sometimes we don't do a very good job of stopping and reflecting on what did we learn in that process, what have we got to be proud of in that process. How can we be kind to ourselves, recognising that you cannot go at full tilt all the time without then taking time to step back a bit. I too am going into next year thinking, you know, how do I navigate next year, wondering what's going to come from this year. You know, it's all like, you know, what will come from this, but also I don't want to feel like I am pushing to the point of, I mean, even stirring my tea really fast, you know, all of those things. You're just like, for goodness sake, slow down. I hope people resonate with that. I'm sure there's lots of people that do. What I would love to talk to you about, Kate, is before we tell people a little bit about what life looks like for you right now. Tell us a little bit about, you know, your family, your setup. Tell us what you want to about that, so people can get a picture of that. Yeah, I just want to, before I do that, I just wanted to what you were just saying then. I've just come out from a yoga class, and the sort of the topic of the class was joy. And we were talking about how joy isn't these big seismic things, you know, and I had this in my head. I wanted to write a book forever. And I didn't know what the book was going to be about, but I was like, I know I've got a book in me. And that was all I focused on. And I did, you know, whether we want to call it manifesting or I just worked really hard and achieved it. But I did that thing. But that book, the release, and when it came out, I didn't have a party. I went to Waterstones and I saw my book and I was like, oh, there's my book in the book, you know, and I was expecting it to be so big and like, wow. I didn't have that either.
You know, and I think maybe it was my nervous system just kind of like shutting it all down. And then when we were talking about things that bring us joy, like the cup of tea, you know, sitting and looking at, you know, the sunshine, or I've just come back from a dog walk and the sun was shining for the first time in weeks. And to me, that is joy. And that's where I want to kind of like focus on. And I had strived so much to get the book out. And I know the book is helpful for so many people, but it didn't bring me the joy that I thought it would, and probably it took over my whole life for. And I don't know, it's sort of just mixed emotions. I understand
what you're saying.
Mixed emotions of it all. But I'm really proud of myself, but I'm also, I think for me to be able to find those moments of joy and purpose, we have to do it in those small daily moments, not
For sure.
burn ourselves out for 3 years and then have that 1 week where it's like launch week and then, you know what I mean?
And maybe before you tell us about, life right now, I'm just thinking about that. I'm thinking so many big events or big moments, not all of them, but I agree with you. I got asked on the party happened because a few people said, we're going to make you. My mum died about 6-7 weeks ago, and I was absolutely no way having a party. I said, there's no way. I've got nothing in me to do this. I don't want to. I've just got to, dig in and do what's necessary. The book launch coming at a time which was not ideal. But it was a bit of a push from some people that love me to say, I want us to market because you're not very good at doing that. But to add to your point, people said to me on the night, how do you feel? And I felt such a pressure to say, oh, I'm elated.
Yeah.
I didn't feel elated. I didn't feel very much. I felt sad my mum wasn't here. I felt excited my friends were with me, which was a lovely thing. And I felt touched that people cared enough to want to celebrate. It was only with friends. It wasn't like it wasn't a publicity event. It was a friend thing. But I did feel a bit of a pressure that I should be feeling loads of emotions. And I guess I do also feel proud rather than anything else that we did it. We did something under tough circumstances, and a massive well done to you. And like you say,
Likewise.
The legacy of it will come from the people whose lives have been impacted by it, who see themselves more clearly because of it, who have tools and actual practical things, which is what I love about your book and mine. They're both practical in their approach. They're about your everyday life being made better. It's not abstract and out there. It is, how does this help you do the life you've got in front of you? So before you tell us about your journey to diagnosis, what's the life setup for you right now?
So I've got 4 kids. I'm very grateful. 4 kids ranging from 20 to nearly 11. They're all neurodivergent. We've gone through a right sort of journey over the past 5 years, I would say, just over 5 years of understanding ourselves, getting different diagnoses. Even still to this day, last week I've got one of my kids who was diagnosed with ADHD 5 years ago. She's just had a dyslexia diagnosis, right, which is possibly more challenging for her than the ADHD diagnosis. So I'm still on this learning curve. I was diagnosed just over 5 years ago. That's what kicked everything off. I've got ADHD all over my family. It's in my husband's family as well. We're very, very neurodivergent, and I am very, to the point where my kids get driven mad. I talk about it all the time because I want to create that awareness, that understanding, the validation, the humor. Like, I want them to be able to see it, because the biggest thing for me is that they are empowered with the tools and the advocacy and whatever that might be that so many people haven't been. And I hear this all the time in my community, that there's just so many women especially who are only just understanding themselves much later on in life, 50s, 60s, 70s, who are mourning a life that they had, really challenging, troubling existence, family dynamics, dysfunction, addiction, health crises. It's just really, it goes very, very deep. And it's not just, this sort of epidemic of ADHD. Everyone, has got ADHD now. It's like, no, these are especially women healing traumatic life circumstances because they didn't know about neurodivergence in themselves and their families. So that is why I am a bit obsessed with this. And that's why I wrote the book. And that's why I'm happy just to have had the opportunity to put what I know right now, because I don't know everything, into the book, let it go into the ether. Whoever picks it up, reads it, hopefully, will learn a little bit more. And that's what kind of made me proud launching it. It wasn't like, I've written a book, check me out. It was, thank God I'm able to, whatever sort of was downloaded into that book, it can go out, and then people can use that information and do what they need with it to help themselves and their daughters and their mothers and, whoever that is. So that's kind of what life's looking like right now.
And this is where your community and my community have crossover, because a lot of the work I'm also doing with people, whether they have they are neurodivergent or not, is people coming to a point in life where the way things are no longer serve them, or they need to make change. And with that comes the need to look at personality and who they are. And so many people will say to me, And I imagine people say this to you through their diagnosis or looking for diagnosis. So much of what I saw as a problem in myself, I want to now begin to see in a more positive light. You know, I saw this as me being oversensitive or I could never turn my brain off, or I wish I was less of a people pleaser, and all of these negative connotations that the work I try to do in a different way to you, but actually is aligned, is there's so much gold and treasure in who you are, and yet you are seeing it through a lens that is negative because you've perhaps had experiences that have meant that it's manifested in your life in a way that hasn't always been helpful. So can you tell us a little bit about how life felt before and after for you? Like, what was difficult for you in the run up to you choosing to have a diagnosis yourself? What did life look like as opposed to how it feels now? Give us a little bit of a snapshot of that.
Yeah,
I know that's a big question.
It is. It's a big question because it was, so I'm now 45 and I got my diagnosis at 40, and it was 2020, November 2020. So we were right in the middle of the pandemic, COVID pandemic, homeschooling 4 kids. My husband's business was, like he was having to change things. Everyone was working from home. I just requalified. I was building my coaching business. I mean, life couldn't have been busier and more stressful and more overwhelming. And I was noticing this sort of buildup of anxiety and problems with sleep. But what wasn't different was I was still feeling, for as long as I can remember, a bit scattered, a bit restless. I was, always trouble sort of settling down, getting work done, processing information, learning in a way that it wasn't, the same way other people learned. But something was shifting. And what I realized is I was already, starting perimenopause. And what we know is that a lot of women who have, grown up with ADHD and could just about cope, when perimenopause starts to sort of kick in, the ADHD symptoms suddenly get much harder to manage. So my hormones were all over the place. I wasn't sleeping. I was waking up drenched in sweat. I thought I was way too young to be in perimenopause. And we now know that especially, ADHD women or neurodivergent women, they start perimenopause earlier because we've got more sensitive hormonal fluctuations.
Interesting. Right.
We're more sensitive to these hormones, and these hormones feed the progesterone and the estrogen feed our dopamine and our GABA levels. And so no wonder some women suddenly start to feel way more anxious, way more scattered, not sleeping properly. As perimenopause starts to kick in, it can be from the age of sort of 36, 37 for some women. So I then went and it was actually my daughter. I was homeschooling my daughter and I was starting to recognise signs in ADHD. For her, sort of quite long-winded. We were getting lots of different assessments. They weren't quite being, we weren't quite getting the answers. And I just ended up Googling, ADHD in girls. I don't know, something must have prompted me. And I was like, that is my daughter. She was 9 at the time. I was like, tick, tick, tick. And actually, all those other symptoms that I'm reading, that is me now. That was me 20 years ago. That was me at the age of 10. And I could see myself through those years. And I also knew what ADHD looked like in boys because my brothers had been diagnosed. So we knew there was ADHD in the family. I just didn't think girls got ADHD. No. I then see it, in all these different family members. So it was my daughter and I, we both got diagnosed in November 2020, within 2 weeks of each other. And that was it. I was just like, oh my God. But I was already trained to be a lifestyle and health coach because I was struggling with my own well-being. I was struggling to manage my anxiety. I was struggling to find time to calm my nervous system, but I didn't understand why. I was just like, well, there's something with me, but I don't really have the language or can't articulate it. So that is why I decided to blend what I was already interested in, what I was already practicing, what I'd learned through this new qualification, and say we need to understand ADHD from a more holistic well-being perspective because medication can't just be the only option. Like that was all I was given. It was psychiatrist, here's your diagnosis, start your titration. I was like, well, is there anything else? No, try the medication. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That was 5 years ago. And it was the same with my daughter. And I just thought, I'm not having this. So I just decided to go on my own kind of research project, which I'm still in the thick of. And yeah, it's nearly 5 years of the podcast, is it? In January? I don't even know, but it's just crazy.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And in terms of this later diagnosis in life, how do you feel it unlocked? What did it unlock for you in terms of understanding who you are? How obviously, how has that shifted a perspective of how you see yourself?
I was very self-critical before. I was very hard on myself. I couldn't understand myself. So I was like, why do I always do this? Why can't I do that? Why do I struggle with this? What's wrong with me? Am I like an immature adult? Have I not got certain like brain cells that other people have? Like, it was literally, my poor husband would just be like banging his head against the wall going, stop asking me, I don't know what it is. I thought it was childhood trauma. I thought I hadn't been taught something properly because I had quite a disjointed academic life because we moved countries. My parents got divorced. I had to learn in a different language. I just thought it was something, we do know that trauma sort of compounds ADHD as well. I just didn't have the answers, but the only answer I had was there was something wrong with me. It was my fault. It was something I wasn't doing enough of. It was something I wasn't trying hard enough with. So the buck stopped with me. Maybe I blamed my parents in some way for, a bit of a dysfunctional childhood, but it didn't unlock anything for me. And it was when I got the ADHD diagnosis, I was able to say, oh my God, this explains everything. Really understanding it from a biological and a neurological or hormonal perspective, a nervous system perspective, like everything, down to the fact that why I couldn't sit in a meeting, why bright lights would hurt me, why noise and smells and sensory overload, and why I was so easily overwhelmed. I was like, oh my God, finally. And that is why, I was asking the questions in the podcast, really getting the experts in and asking the questions that I needed to know, because if I didn't know them, there's a lot of people out there that didn't know them either. And that's what I've been hearing, non-stop really since then. So, yeah.
And it's so good that you've, taken this understanding that you've had of your own to help so many other people access a different way of viewing themselves. And I think when we understand more about our wiring, it gives us this realization. I mean, I was even just listening to completely different, but Jacinda Ardern talking about being in politics earlier, and she was talking about how she felt so she's not good enough and can't do politics because she feels things so deeply. And she was like, I must be less sensitive. I need to be less sensitive. And there was this inbuilt thing that this is not good. This is not as good as other people who are less sensitive than me.
Yeah.
And actually she reframed that into somebody said to her, no, you need to use that and make it strong and make it healthy and good for you. Not in a way that then is, just beyond exhausting for you, but don't try and not be who you are. And one of the things I talk about a lot in the book is how do we have a healthy version of the person that we're made to be, which is essentially what you're talking about. It's not about eliminating, this is not me, I do not have ADHD. It's about how do I continually work with who I am so that my life feels increasingly healthy. And those things that make us who we are, like Jacinda Ardern feeling she's more sensitive in the world of lots of other people who are not. How does she use that advantageously rather than feeling crushed by it? In your book, there's a whole section called Awakening Who You Uniquely Are. And I wondered we could talk about that a little bit. And how do we begin to even recognise what's authentically who we are and what's us being shaped by other people's expectations? How do we even begin to figure that out from your perspective?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
It's a big one. And, there's a lot of, as you probably know all about it, it's our belief systems, it's our conditioning, it's our coding, it's who we believe that we were. But so many women, with ADHD have masked because they didn't quite know why they behaved the way they did, but it didn't feel safe or it didn't feel right or we didn't feel like other women. So we just thought, right, when we're outside in public, in work, with other women or in any other circumstance, let's just sort of try and put on this exterior so we're kind of more accepted, or it just feels like we are tolerated better, or whatever that might be. And the masking becomes so kind of part of ourselves that we don't quite know if we're masking, if this is our real selves. And so this is an opportunity when we get the diagnosis, often in midlife, it's this opportunity to kind of go, well, what is it that I want now? Like, who am I now? What does this mean? You know, do I want to be working in this career? Do I want to be working in this environment? Do I want to be with these friends? Am I showing up in the way that I want to show up? Am I spending time with the people that I want to spend time with? And it gives us a bit of an invitation to really assess our lives and what is working and what isn't working, and no longer keep pushing uphill. And when it just feels exhausting and we're in this sort of resistance mode, which is often why so many women go in these cycles of burnout. They don't even know why they're in burnout, but just life feels so much more harder, much more draining and exhausting. So I would say, you know, I speak to so many women, it's like, this is your opportunity, you know, yes, grieve all that you didn't know, but now can you land into a place of acceptance, of recognition of all that you've gone through? And so now what am I allowed? What can I give myself permission for? What feels good to me? And, you know, life is real and we've still got mortgages to pay and, you know, kids and all of that, whatever, you know, circumstance you're in. But it's like, how can we do life a little bit more on our terms and not according to all the expectations and pressures that either we've put on ourselves or other people have put on us. And I think that's really freeing. I think a lot of women suddenly go kind of like, oh my God, so I don't have to live like this anymore. Like, there's another alternative. Like, it's okay to be me. And that, you know, that's when it gets quite exciting. That's when it gets quite fun, because it's like, yeah, you've got ADHD. Yeah, you've got autism. Yeah, you've got dyslexia, whatever that is. Yes, life has been really, really hard and challenging. Yes, there's been so many things that you've navigated, but how can we step into all that resilience that you've kind of like honed and be like, right now, what am I able to take for me and what feels good to me?
Yeah, and I like what you've just said there about that resilience that you've honed and recognising that there's been that. And there may be people who recognise for different reasons they've masked who they are. It may be, you know, people listening that masking is something that like, actually I haven't been fully true to myself for different circumstances and reasons. And listening to you, I work with lots of women who are in that sort of middle of life phase. And there is additionally to that knocking of confidence. I'm speaking to my own sister the other day and she said, actually, you know, I can tell that my confidence has been knocked over these years, and there's a reflection on things I might have done once upon a time without even thinking I'm struggling. And so if you add that on to the fact that somebody might also be neurodiverse and doesn't know they are, no wonder there's a discombobulation and a lack of clarity that people feel. Can you think of something like within your personality that you have learnt to, that you may have seen as a burden before, that you are learning to use more like positively rather than not be who you are? Something that maybe once upon a time left unchecked wasn't really good for you. You're learning to use more, you know, but more positively channeled.
Yeah. Oh, listen, I've always been a very kind of creative person, someone that's always had lots of ideas. And
100 ideas a day.
Yeah, I'm always like, my friends laugh at me because it's kind of like I have a business idea for every one of my friends. I'm like, you should so do that. Like, why are you not doing that? And, you know, I love that. I love inventing things and coming up with new concepts. But the version of me before kind of put pressure on myself to push through with everything, like because you've got that idea, then you have to go ahead and do with it. And when you can't do it, or you don't have time, or you're flaky, or you lose interest in that, then there's something wrong with you.
And did that make you feel a sense of shame?
Yes, I was, you know, I was like, oh, but I had that idea and I've really believed in that idea, and actually sort of 6 months later I don't really feel that idea anymore. Except I now accept that. I accept like some ideas are just meant to be really fun ideas, and maybe they're meant to be for other people. I always say that, like, you have an idea, it doesn't mean that you have to be the one to execute it. It could be either a team member, it could be a friend, it could be someone else, it could be a client.
Could be for later.
It could be for later, exactly. And so, with a heavy heart, because I do kind of like want to do lots. I realize that I am one person with very finite energy who wants to be around, for their kids. I do want to be present for my kids while they're still at home. I want to be present for my husband. I want to have time. For me, time, freedom, flexibility is a massive value of mine. So if I take too much on and do too much and want to, I don't have time to see my friends. I don't have time to enjoy life, go on holiday and all these things. So
I'm with you.
Yeah, I think I embrace my creativity, but I do have learned now to sort of put a pin on things. I've got a whiteboard with lots of ideas on. In true ADHD style, have piles of papers, notebooks, files. I don't have all the answers. I have people come to me and say, I need to be more organized. I need to be more productive. I need to be this. I'm like, you're coming to the wrong person, because if you think I've got my ADHD in check, I don't. I'm learning as well, but what I'm trying to step more into is the self-acceptance and the self-compassion.
And being kinder about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And some of this comes with the territory of being who we are. That's a phrase I use a lot. I've got this here in front of me, this remarkable, like these electronic notepads. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to change my life. And when I use it, it does. But Laura, who is my EA, she'll say to me, Hannah, where did you make those notes on that really important conversation? And I'm like, back of an envelope, that is classic me back of an envelope. And she's like, why is it here and why does it look like that? She and I also have these to-do list pads, and I do like a to-do list pad, but mine looks like it's owned by somebody. My sister was here the other day and she said, what is this? And Laura's was immaculate and mine has got scribble pictures, and I'm like, this is what my brain looks like. But I think what we're trying to say here, and people have their own versions of this, and you do not have to be neurodivergent to feel like there's parts of your personality that feel frustrating and difficult, and I wish I wasn't like that. There's a universal thought here, which is exacerbated and augmented and enhanced, actually, when we have neurodiversity to consider. But other people listening, if there's something within your character that you think, this is so frustrating, actually embracing it and then putting some boundary around it is better than just pretending that's not who you are and pushing it away. And I'm not going to be that, I'm not going to be sensitive anymore. I'm not going to be creative anymore because it's just too much to handle. Actually learning to handle it a bit better. And the other thing I was thinking about as you were talking is when we're not very organised by nature or whatever else the thing might be, just getting 5 or 10% better is the goal. It's not about becoming Little Miss Order. It's what's the strategy I can put in place? What little bit can I add to my routine? The trouble is, some of us are so all in. We go, right, I'm going to get this thing. I'm going to get this dashboard. I'm going to get this. And then we can't keep up with all that stuff. So one of the things I'm trying to talk to people about at the moment, what's one thing you can embed and shift and change to make your life a little bit easier? Commit to that, get that embedded before you start trying to add process after process after process that you're just going to end up feeling like a failure about, because you'll drop them and you won't be able to commit to it. That's kind of one of my thoughts. The other thing I'd love to talk to you a bit about, because I'm aware we'll end up talking for hours and hours, and this is one thing I really wanted to pick your brains on. So I recently did a podcast episode about the book going out into the world and the whole concept of getting reviews from people. And whenever we get feedback, and I've been fortunate enough that I've had lots of lovely feedback in the past, but obviously anything has got the potential for negative feedback. There's a piece of work I do, Kate, which is with a CEO development company, an organisation. And every time I speak for them, everybody privately grades you. And if your grades drop beneath a certain amount, you won't be asked to come back. So there's this dashboard that exists, which I basically never look at it. And I know they'll tell me if there's a problem. So I kind of think it must be all right. But if your grades, it's a kind of, everybody's giving you immediate private feedback on you out of 5. You have to stay above about 4.7, otherwise you're not going to be asked to continue. And that's happening all the time. Obviously, book reviews come out, and they're things you can't control. You could have people who absolutely love it, but one person might be like, oh, nothing in there, nothing new there, whatever it might be. And one of the concepts in your book that you talk about and being real about is rejection sensitive dysphoria. And again, rejection can be felt globally, but there is something about people with ADHD having heightened sensitivity and criticism. Can you talk a little bit about some principles to help us cope with this? Like, how do we manage that when it could end, could end up, we've put our books out there anyway, but for some people it might mean I'm just not going to do that thing because I don't want to be rejected. Tell us a little bit from your experiences, your expertise here around handling rejection and even as rejection that happens or rejection that you're thinking might happen, because they're obviously two different things.
Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned this, because RSD is huge for most people with ADHD, and it shows up in different ways. Whether it's criticism, feedback, just any kind of way that you might feel unsafe. And it's easy just to kind of shrink back and make yourself small. It can also manifest in like overcompensating, perfectionism, people pleasing. It can stem from things like not knowing you're neurodiverse. And so from being a young child, and you do things differently, you write differently, you listen differently, you fidget, you forget, you're not efficient in the way that you think you should be. All these different things is like another criticism. So we sort of have to sort of change and mold ourselves. And a lot of women go into that people-pleasing perfectionism mode, which, you can see that comes out in masking or overworking or trying to prove things or looking for external validation. It's quite a complex thing. And I do go into it in sort of more detail in the book.
Yes.
I definitely had RSD growing up, and that was one of the big things when I got my diagnosis. I was like, oh my God, now I understand. And actually one of my Instagram posts that I did that kind of went a bit crazy a few months ago was I talked about my birthday. And I suddenly got a perspective on why I hate my birthday so much, because it was a moment of RSD of... I hated the thought of celebrating my birthday or organising something, because it could give me the opportunity for someone to say, oh, I can't come, or I don't want to come out, or I don't have time, or that type of thing. And that's what came up with my book as well. I thought, if I do a party and people can't come, my book was launched in July, everyone was on holiday. I already preempted that, I'm so sorry I'm away, or I wasn't a celebrity, so I'm not a journalist. Like I wouldn't have had all those sort of VIP people there. No. I thought, I'm shutting this down before anyone even, and that was my RSD coming in, and I thought, I don't even want anything. Is that sad? Maybe, because I could have had a lovely little celebration like you did of people just saying well done, and that, honouring that moment. But for me, with all my awareness, I still went, I'm not willing to put myself in that unsafe situation of feeling like I could be rejected. Now, interestingly, I don't have that when I read reviews about the book. Thankfully, the book has had mostly really good reviews.
Of course it has.
But there have been a few sort of slightly negative reviews. But I just kind of go, oh, it's a book and it's a review, and that's what people do. And, it doesn't hit me as hard.
No.
So you have to keep it, you have to kind of recognise where it is and maybe start leaning into it. So actually, when I had that realisation about my birthday, it was before my birthday, and I thought, right, I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone here. And I sent a message out to my friends and said, I don't normally do something for my birthday. I think a reason why is because my birthday is at the beginning of June. It's normally always half term, historically always been half term. People have always been away, not around. Yeah. Even now with kids, most people go away that May half term. And there was a few people around who were like, oh, it's so nice to celebrate your birthday because you never do. And it was really lovely. And we made a big fuss. And I thought, this is lovely. But it still felt a little bit, I thought, but I've done this now. So next year, it's not going to feel as difficult. So it's trying to find those moments where we do feel a little bit like jarred by it. How can we just push ourselves? I think you said before, just a little bit, 5%, 10%. So our nervous system, it's always about our nervous system, can edge towards feeling safe. Again, using the birthday analogy, it's like, can we just go for a walk? Can we go for a coffee? Instead of like, let's organise a big dinner or let's organise a big party, put all this pressure, let's just go for a dog walk. And if we can stop for a coffee, that's perfect. that would be enough for me.
And I also think one of the things that helps us with stuff like this is trustworthy people who know you well. If you have found yourself hurt, if you have felt yourself feeling more rejection than somebody else might, talking about that with a safe person who can gently offer a slightly different perspective can be so helpful. I know there's things that have hurt me more than they might have other people because I'm a bit more rejection sensitive. And lovely people in my life, my sister being one of them, will gently remind me, that's see, it's like help me see it a little bit differently, rather than taking it so personally, which is so easy to do. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about, and I'm aware otherwise we're going to have a very long episode. But can you just, because you will do this better than me, I want to say first of all that what I love about your book, I'm going to just say this for the listeners, it's number one, it's beautiful. So it's an absolutely beautiful book. It's full of content and things that actually help you learn, but it's also full of strategies. It's, again, like I said earlier, it's full of things that you can say, right, what am I actually going to do a little bit differently because I now understand this? And again, when I wrote my book, that was what I wanted it to be, something that was full of stuff that people could actually go, right, well, I can make that shift. It's actually doable. I'm a regular person in a regular life with a normal life. How do I shift it forward? How would you sort of, in a nutshell, describe your book? I mean, I love this bit, the whole recognise your burnout signs, and again, helping people put those things in place. Tell us how you would, what would you add to what I've just said?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you. And likewise, I loved your book as well, really loved it. And I think, quite esoteric by nature. And so for me to sort of break it down into stages and really sort of like finer points was harder for me. It was definitely my ADHD, and I'm so grateful for my editor because they pressed me and said, right, can you give it to me in 3 stages, or what would you do? And that really helped me open up a different type of part of my brain to really help people if they're opening the book and go, well, where do I start? Like, I've been living with this. It feels so big, but where do I even begin? And I always say the book is for people who are maybe curious about ADHD, who are waiting for a diagnosis. They've just had a diagnosis and they can't afford coaching, or they can't afford, or they don't want to go on medication, like all these different scenarios. They're reading it for someone else, it could be like a husband reading it for their wife, or, reading it for their daughter. I really believe that the book has been written for anyone that is just looking for that extra bit of support alongside the medication, not with their medication, they can start bringing in these holistic wellbeing practices every single day, because none of it is hard. None of it is challenging. I'm not asking anyone to do anything really big and complicated. This is just stuff that has helped me, has helped my clients. And I believe needs sharing through this neuroaffirming lens, because there's lots of books written about, well-being and breath work and all sorts, but to bring it all together where we're talking about RSD, we're talking about burnout, we're talking about hormones, all under the banner of for ADHD women, that is something we needed information on a long time ago. And it now gives women the language to be able to articulate themselves. They can advocate, they can go to the doctor and say, I now understand this better, and I don't want to be on anti-anxiety medication. I think I need a diagnosis. And so it's I really believe it's empowering women. And that is what this book is for. So yeah, thank you so much, Hannah.
And the show notes will have wherever everyone can find you. I also have a blog that will go this, and it will be on there. But what's one really great next step for people to take if they're listening to this to stay in contact with you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've got the podcast. The podcast comes out every week, the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Podcast. That's a free resource. Go ahead, amazing guests, so much content in there. I've got a community called Moryoussef, which is based on unmasking authenticity,
brilliant,
creating a connection with like-minded women. We're going to have a live event in March, and hopefully it's about a revolution of more women coming together to support each other, help each other, learn together. I show up live, doing workshops. I bring in guest experts. I'd love to bring you in, Hannah. And yeah, I think I think this is just a moment in time now that women are able to step out of the belief systems and the conditionings that they thought that was that was meant to be for them, and realize that there's a lot more out there. And I think what you're doing, you know, helping more people find their purpose, to understand your own internal language, to then put that, you know, push that forward. I think I was looking for purpose, but I didn't know I had ADHD, so I kept blocking myself and self-sabotaging. Once I knew I understood my sort of brain and my nervous system, I'm able to step more into that purpose with a lot more self-compassion and self-acceptance. So, but I couldn't have done that without the ADHD diagnosis. That was the key that unlocked everything for me.
Kate, thank you so much. I've really appreciated your time. I know loads of people will be having aha moments as they're listening. Perhaps, like you say, ADHD curious people who are listening and thinking, I wonder whether some of this applies to me, or a loved one, like you say, somebody they might be listening to. And I hope, I wish you all the very best for your 2026, Kate, that it's full of peace and rest, but also really exciting things too. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Likewise, Hannah. Thank you.